Welcome back to the Energy Fix. Today, I want to talk all about burnout, what burnout is, how you might get there, what it looks like. And I also want to get just a little vulnerable today and share my burnout story with you because honestly, it was kind of a doozy and it was a real eye opener for me. I never truly understood what burnout was until I was there, until I hit that rock bottom. And that's what I want to share with you today because as I am listening and talking to people, I'm realizing how much people truly don't understand how close to burnout they are and how that can be detrimental to your health. So, we're going to talk all about that. Now, before we dive in, if you are new to my channel, please hit the subscribe button. Ring the bell for notifications so that you never miss an episode, and share this out to friends or family or anybody who you feel this might be hugely beneficial for, or even just a little beneficial. Also, just a little bit of an announcement. In 2 weeks or so, I'm going to be coming out and relaunching my crystal Reiki sessions. These are going to be deep, intuitive crystal Reiki sessions, and I'm completely revamping the way that I offer it. So keep your eyes out. I will be talking more about it here, and there will be a link below for you to check out more information. That launch is officially, cart is officially going to be open on January 29th. 2024 if you are watching this as this episode has come out. So keep your eyes open. All right, let's dive into talking about burnout. Here's the thing. Your mental well-being is this beautiful, unique way that you handle emotions. It's how you respond to stress. It's what determines your general overlook on life. So many of us will poo-poo away this concept of mental well-being because we don't think that it stands as much of an importance as our physical health, right? But in reality, it opens up the doors to your perception and how you see the general world around you and your overlook on life. Research actually shows that the idea of having this healthy sense of well-being has so many different benefits, and it allows us to truly experience life, to truly enjoy life, and it also helps to promote resilience when we're in difficult situations. So the better our mental well-being, the better we're able to handle some of these hard times that come in. And I feel like right now, especially, we are truly in the depth of it all. And having this resiliency and this mental well being is so important. It's not just that, though. Our mental well being also helps us to fulfill our goals, to set goals in the first place. It helps us to build and maintain healthy relationships, to help us to stop going into old toxic cycles that maybe we are so used to doing. Maybe it's all that we've ever known, right? But when we can choose or to step into or to heal our mental well being, that opens up the doors for so much more. But here's the reality. Stress is this normal part of life. One of the things that I truly have an issue with when it comes to the health and wellness and also the spiritual community is this concept of pushing away stress like it is just going to magically disappear if you do all the right things. It doesn't work that way because stress is completely a normal part of life. It doesn't matter how much you wish for a stress-free life. Stress is this natural human response that's necessary. It's necessary and it's ever present. It is always going to be here. And actually, in small amounts, stress, like having a deadline for something, is going to help improve your mental well being and help you to push forward into your goals, help you to strive for greater evolution as a human being. for greater transformation as a human being. We don't want to totally push away stress out of our life because that would not help us. Having little bits of stress not only improves the mental well-being, but it also boosts our productivity and our alertness and our energy levels. Like it gives us that little bit of drive, like, let's do this thing. However, the problem that comes in, the obstacle that comes in, is when we experience these stressors becoming more prolonged and chronic and having a greater level of needing to cope with that maybe we aren't there yet. It can be physically draining, it can be mentally draining, emotionally draining, even spiritually draining. It can completely pull our fire out, our wind out of our sails. And this chronic stress can feel so overwhelming, especially when it comes to our physical and our mental and emotional well being. So, before we really dive into all of this, let's just talk a little bit about what burnout is so you know what that looks like. Burnout is a state of mental, physical, and emotional exhaustion. If you're experiencing burnout, you're probably going to notice that it is difficult to engage in these activities or these things or these passions that you normally find truly enjoyable or meaningful or things that get you excited. Like it's almost like somebody turned the light out, right? When you're experiencing burnout, these enjoying things just kind of fizzle away and it just becomes another thing that you need to do. Or maybe you don't even do it anymore because you can't see the joy in it. You may no longer care about the things that are important to you or experience this increased sense of hopelessness, giving up and not feeling like you want to push on because something doesn't feel right. It's hard to muster all of that up. Now, I will say for me, I never actually knew what burnout was. Logically, I did. Logically, I knew, but I didn't actually know. Like in the depth of me, no. The reality was that I was on a slow ride to my burnout bottom for years and years and years, but I never really knew that. So let's talk about what some of the signs and some of the symptoms are that can actually be kind of sneaky, and you may poo poo it away as being something else. Let's talk about that. So let's talk about physical symptoms. This could look like things like headaches, stomach or intestinal issues like digestive distress, fatigue, some frequent illnesses. Maybe you're getting sick or getting colds often. It could look like changes in appetite or sleep. Like maybe you don't have an appetite or you're finding it really hard to fall asleep at night. Maybe you have racing thoughts, or maybe you just have this underlying anxiety or anger or frustration that is just residing there and you don't know where it's coming from. I know for me, the digestive stuff, the stomach issues, some of the headaches, I started getting migraines. I was exhausted all the time, and I never in my life ever would categorize myself as somebody who was tired all the time. If anything, I had more energy than I knew what to do with. I started to overeat and have these massive cravings, lots of emotional eating. And my sleep cycle was completely off. I could fall asleep, but there was no way that I was possibly going to sleep all night. I was tossing and turning and having all of these difficulties. Now, at the time, as I was going through all this, I just kind of pushed it away and said, it must have been something that I ate, or maybe I have a food allergy, or maybe it's because I'm getting older and I'm going through some hormonal changes. Or maybe It's because there are some environmental factors that are playing a role. Maybe I need to detox. Maybe there's some heavy metals or some mold issues. Now, listen, all of this could be true, and this is why it gets confusing because all of that could be true statements. However, it could also be burnout. If you don't know what to look for, or you're a little scared and maybe unwilling to pull open the curtain and look what's behind it. So let's talk about some emotional symptoms. So emotional symptoms could look like things like cynicism and excessive sarcasm, helplessness or hopelessness. Maybe this sense of failure or self-doubt, like you can't quite do it. This decreased satisfaction in anything that you do. Maybe things just don't actually feel very satisfying to you. And you're not sure why. Like you can't find that little nugget of or flicker of light that brings satisfaction to things that you do. Maybe you're feeling detached or alone in this world, or there's this loss of motivation. All of those are some emotional signs. Now, I will say for me, as I was going through these years and years of experiencing this ride towards burnout, I noticed this was apparent. This was very noticeable when I would look back at some of my journaling that I was doing, or some of the writing, or even thinking about conversations, or like, on Facebook, how Facebook has those memories pop up, and you look back, you're like, I can't believe I said that, or talked about that, or put that out into the public eye. Like, that's what I'm talking about. These feelings of sarcasm and cynicism that were popping up in all of these retrospective pieces that I was looking at. This feeling of self-doubt and not trusting myself over and over and over as I was moving through life and making decisions and having all of these things on my plate, my to-do list was excessively long. I kept feeling like I wasn't quite sure if I was capable, if I was doing the right thing, if I was making the right decision. Like there was all of these levels of self-doubt that kept popping in. And then the satisfaction. I was never feeling satisfied. Maybe a few occasions there was that level popping in, but it was getting to the point where I could check it off the list and I was good. Does any of that sound familiar to you? Are any of these kind of making you think like, could this be me? Because it could be. Again, all of these things could play into a bunch of different reasons or root causes that it's popping up, but it could be burnout too. Now, let's talk about some behavior signs. So, what behaviorally might burnout look like? It could look like you are withdrawing or isolating. Listen, I'm a natural introvert, just naturally. So, isolation and withdrawing are super easy for me. And I truly welcome it because it helps me recharge. But when you're withdrawing and you're isolating because you just can't handle any of the world anymore, and you're not using that time to recharge, that's a big sign that it could be burnout. When you're procrastinating and you're pushing things away and you say, I'll do those later on, that could be a sign of burnout too, because you're already feeling overwhelmed and overloaded. Maybe you're having some reduced performance in the way that you do everyday tasks, or even in the way that you do your work. Do you feel like that zest to put your all into whatever it is that you're doing doesn't feel very easily accessible? That could be burnout. Or maybe you're having some outbursts. Or maybe you're using different substances to cope or other addiction tendencies to cope. I know for me, this was definitely part of it. That emotional eating that was popping in and that desire to just distract myself in any way. These outbursts, these anger outbursts that kept popping up over the smallest things, things that should not have even been registering on the radar of things to upset me or create an outburst. It was creating outbursts. Again, I didn't realize that that was what was going on. I was looking outside of myself instead of looking within myself to see the root cause of where all of this stuff was coming from. So, burnout is not caused solely by stressful work environments or too many responsibilities or long to-do lists or even our relationships. It isn't just because of that. It can be experienced by anyone with prolonged levels of chronic stress, chronic pressure, chronic overwhelm, chronic saying yes to everything and anybody. When we do this stuff for long periods of time and it creates this chronic stress and this feeling of unease and overwhelm deep within our soul, that's where burnout comes from. That is like the match hitting the wood and creating the flame as it burns. And it may start really small. It may start just like a flicker of light. And then all of a sudden, it explodes. And that is where we start to have the big issues. So let's talk just a little bit about my burnout story. And I want to share this with you because I feel like this was such a huge eye opener for me in understanding truly that I was on the brink of falling deep, deep, deep. And if I did not make the changes this time around, I was going to have some real problems. So my story goes a little something like this. I was lying on the floor, face up, unable to cry, unable to move. I felt completely paralyzed, but the irony was that I had no tears to shed. Nothing. All I could feel was this deep void within me that felt absent of hope. It felt full of despair. It was a desire to not go on. And I just didn't know what to do with it. It was a Sunday evening, and I remember that so vividly because I had a pretty busy work day the next day. And as I laid there on the floor, staring at this lifeless white ceiling, breathing shallowly, not understanding what was truly going on, all I could think about was, how am I going to get my work done tomorrow? What is going on? The reality was that I hit burnout. I finally arrived there. I had no clue it was coming. So as I laid on the floor, and after what felt like a lifetime, I finally was able to get up, roll onto my side, heave myself onto 2 feet, and wobble into the bedroom. And like a zombie, I stumbled and just fell onto my bed. All I wanted to do was sleep, to sleep it off, because in the past, if I could go to bed and just sleep off the fatigue and the exhaustion, all would be better in the morning. Everything would shift, everything would change. It would be just enough for me to replenish my energy stores and move on with my day. But this time it was different because this time I felt like I couldn't even sleep. I just laid there and thought. and stared, wondering what was going on and what happened and what was going to shake me out of this. 'Cause here's the thing. Just earlier that day, I was rushing around. I had all of these things on my to-do list that I was frantically ticking off. I was juggling so many balls in the air that day, and then, of course, prior to that. And I found myself in a position where I was at a crossroads. I was at a crossroads. All I knew from my past was that I needed to work hard. I needed to have to-do lists. Unfortunately, at that point, I had some poor boundaries, and I only knew how to operate by rushing and fitting as much in as I could because that was what I had time for, to get all the things off of my to-do list. But I realized at this point that now I needed to make a choice because I was being forced to stop. So as I laid there on my bed, really struggling to find the ability to fall asleep, I decided that that next day I was going to cancel everything that I had on my schedule for the day. And I was going to go and do some research. And I was going to allow myself to calm down and just have the day to recoup. And I remember I finally did fall asleep. So I remember waking up in the morning and deciding that I was going to go into the library and I was going to sit down and do some research. Libraries are like my happy place, so that's why I was going there instead of sitting in my office on my computer where I'd be tempted to do work or to check my email or do any of that stuff. I didn't want that temptation, so I decided to go to my happy place and be surrounded by books and by knowledge and just let myself sink in and get lost for a little bit. Before I decided to do that, though, I was going to go for a walk and move my body and just relax into what felt good for me. Nothing too strenuous, super light, super healing, super relaxing. So that's what I did. I went for a walk, and on my entire walk, I just cried and cried and cried. And when I came back, I decided to do some yoga. So I got onto the floor and I started doing some yoga, but the level of tears that opened up for me was a level that was deeper than what I've known. I cried so hard doing half kneeling stretches and low back twists and child's pose, just sobbing. I felt so weak. I felt like my body couldn't move. But I was so happy because I realized now I didn't really realize this in the time. It took some time for me to understand and to sink into it. But I realized at the time how grateful I was because that moment, my body was coming back online. I wasn't numbing out anymore. I wasn't distracting. I was forcing myself to be in my body, to be in the moment, to be in my presence. And when I forced myself to do that, whew, it allowed some emotions to be released. And it allowed an awareness to open up within me so that I could look at what was going on instead of shutting everything down and keeping the curtain closed. And that was what I did. I finished my yoga. I went to the library. I did a bunch of research. I checked out a bunch of books, brought them home, and I spent the next 2 weeks reading and learning and diving deep into burnout and what that means and how that can look for someone who has always identified herself as being type A, driven, full of energy, overachiever, like all of those stereotypical words. When in reality, that which I wore as a badge of honor, actually was my detriment. And not saying that that is a detriment to be that kind of personality. It's not. It is such a gift. But the detriment was that I had no clue how to handle that in a healthy way. And therefore, I spun out of control. So, my burnout story is one of which I don't want to return to, in all honesty, but it's also one in which I'm so grateful for, because without that, I would have never made some really hard decisions and started to say no and set better boundaries. I, at that point, stopped saying yes to a very, very hard relationship that I was involving myself in. And I set some boundaries around it. I set some boundaries around my work and started to get okay with maybe not saying yes to everything and not saying yes to the things that didn't light my heart up. I was able to move forward in just a more powerful way. So, thinking about my burnout story and thinking maybe about your life and maybe where you're at this moment, what's been going on, how your health has looked, how your mental and your emotional well being has been, how you've been allowing yourself to connect into your spirituality or into your belief system. Thinking about that, I'm going to go through just a few factors here of other things that might contribute to some of your burnout or to maybe the potential of burnout spiraling out of control like it did for me. And I want you just to think, maybe close your eyes if you're in a safe place to do that. Maybe close your eyes and just sink into this and how many of these really, really resonate with you. Or maybe you're playing a big role in your life right now. So, burnout can include things like, of course, work related causes. If you're feeling exhausted or tired or uninspired and not passionate about the work that you're doing, or maybe it's a really hard, toxic environment, having little to no control over the work that you do, maybe having an overly demanding expectation of your job or your career or the things that you do at work, or at home. Maybe monotonous or unchallenging work. Maybe it's the same thing day in and day out, and you just aren't feeling challenged anymore. Maybe you're in environments that are chaotic or high pressure. This could be work, but this could also be your home life. It could be friend groups. It could be your mommy group that you're hanging out with. It could be working too much without socializing, without relaxing, without taking the time to replenish your soul. It could be pushing away the creative or the pleasure activities that you truly enjoy because you just have too much on your plate. It could be a lack of close or supportive relationships. Maybe you're feeling alone. Maybe you haven't developed because you haven't had time to develop really healthy, strong relationships. Or maybe you're stuck in toxic relationships that aren't serving you anymore. It could be too many responsibilities and not having enough help. Are you the kind of person that always says yes to everything and never asks anybody to do anything for you or to help take the load off? It could be that you're not getting enough sleep and you're feeling drained and exhausted all the time. And maybe when you do wake up in the morning and you decide to get on with your day, you have these perfectionist tendencies that completely overwhelm you and take you over because it not only creates more work, but it creates more stress mentally, emotionally, and energetically. Perhaps you're in this place of having such a pessimistic view on yourself and on the world around you, feeling hopeless, feeling like there's no possibility for goodness and abundance to come in. Like, how could things actually change? And how could you possibly make things change? Are you deserving of the change? Right? All those pessimistic views that may come in. Maybe you have this over desiring need to be in control. Like control, if you don't have control, you feel completely wiped out. Maybe you just are a high achiever and you like to take on a lot of projects, or you like to take on a lot of passion projects, or a lot of creative endeavors. And then all of a sudden, you find yourself completely overwhelmed because you have all of these things that excited you at first and you said yes to, and now you have all these obligations. That could be outward obligations on paper, or it could be internal obligations and these standards that you hold yourself up to. These are just a few of the examples that I want to share with you, that it's not just about what's going on in any given situation or any given moment. It's about these multitude of things, these behaviors, these personality traits, and the way that we move ourselves through this world. The lifestyle choices that we choose, right? Like this all plays a huge factor. But even though burnout is possible for each and every one of us, and we could be on the brink of that at any moment, there is hope. So there is absolutely hope. And I want to talk about what that could be. Like, how can you regain some balance back in your life? How can you bring that back into yourself? Let's take the time to just pause. Let's change this direction. Let's learn how we can overcome the burnout. Because if you've identified that burnout is a great possibility for you, and maybe you are starting down that road, maybe you've been there, or maybe you're deep in it right now. Let's talk about how we can change that. There are some specific things that you can do, that you can bring in to bring this sense of well-being and this sense of balance again. And it may feel like a journey at first, and it may feel kind of hard when you're first starting, but taking that moment to just relax into it and know that you have the power within you to make the shift is the first step. So knowing you have the power within, that is one thing, but sometimes it's hard to find that or to remember that. And sometimes we need to have some support. That could be from friends or community groups or colleagues. Maybe it's a trusted therapist. But allowing yourself to take a moment and turn to other people for some support, maybe even to just complain for a moment and get everything off of your chest. Or maybe it's a true brainstorming session where you're trying to figure out, well, what could you do differently? Because take it from me, like, I know, and I've said this so many times, I know that when this is your normal way of operating, when your brain is tuned into a certain way, it's really hard to see the outside things outside of your box, like those outside possibilities. It's hard to see that until maybe somebody cracks the door on your box and allows you to see what some of those things are. So there's so much value in just talking about what you're going through and allowing that support to come in naturally in whatever way it needs to come in. You can also start to reframe the way that you look at your work, reframe the way that you look at your home and your life situations, trying to find some value, some meaning, some balance. This is why the concept of gratitude is talked about so often, because it's a small little moment, little blip in time that you can consciously and purposefully connect into finding the meaning and value in something. So, if the concept of gratitude and practicing gratitude resonates with you, that would apply right here. That helps you to reframe the way that you look at things. Maybe it's doing some brain rewiring. Maybe, again, talking to a therapist so that you can learn how to reframe. Or maybe it's something as simple, and I use air quotes here, like as simple as doing some affirmational work and being very purposeful in the way that you speak to yourself and noticing throughout the day that when you do say something that is more negative or harmful or pushing you back into the old way of thinking and the old way of behaving, taking that moment to say stop, like having that pattern interrupt so that you can choose a different neural pathway in your brain to go down and create a different way, a different perception and a different reframing of what's possible. The reality is we need to shift and change our neural pathways in our brain so that we can completely shift and change the way that we used to operate at. That's how we start to shift out of burnout. There's so many other things: somatic healing, body movement, releasing energies and releasing emotions, getting energy healing done. Like all of that stuff is going to help you with your burnout. But first, we need to start to reframe that there is a possibility that we can take back control and that we can find value and meaning in what we're doing. Now, let's talk about priorities. Reevaluating your priorities by taking some time off and taking regular breaks throughout the day. Put your hand up if you find it really hard to take some time off, especially during your day. I'm guilty of this too. I know. And it can be really challenging to prioritize taking that time. One thing that's been really helpful for me, every month I sit down and I take a few hours and I think about what I want to create in the next month, who or maybe what I want to expand in. Where do I feel like I need to personally transform or personally shift? And where in my work do I want to step into? But part of that is also me on my calendar physically blocking off time of when I'm going to have an inner child day where I just play and allow whatever to happen, or when I'm taking purposeful time off, that I'm just taking time off and letting my body, my mind, my soul to relax. That's been really helpful for me because when that comes up on the calendar, it's like, oh, I gave myself permission to do this. This is an appointment, right? It just takes a little bit of the guilt out of it because I've already scheduled that in ahead of time and I prepared to have that. But you need to reevaluate those priorities and take some of your time off. You know, thinking about maybe what your core values are. What are the things that are super important to you? What are some of the things that light you up? Is it spending more time with family and friends? Is it doing things to improve your health? Is it traveling or having an adventure in your life? All of those things can't fully come to fruition and can't blossom into existence unless you create time for them. And that takes prioritizing the rest and the open space, the openness to allow that to come in. To help move out of burnout or to shift burnout, we also need to nourish our creativity. This kind of goes into what I was just talking about, but nourishing the creativity and doing something that we find interesting. We are creative beings. We are beautiful, amazing, creative, abundant, expansive beings. We are so intelligent and so tapped into divine wisdom. But yet, so many of us cut that off because we aren't sure if we can give ourselves the permission to truly step into our creative passions and the things that light us up. We're not living this life to just work. We're living this life for expansion and enjoyment to create love. I believe that every single human being's purpose, on some level of one or another, is to truly step into the depth of love and creating more love and goodness around them. For some people, that's really hard. But our creativity, especially as women, our creativity and love go hand in hand. Your creativity, which really stems out of your sacral chakra, your second chakra, the creativity and more of that feminine energy is directly connected to your heart chakra, which is the energy center of love and compassion, not only for others, but for yourself as well. So when you create, you also step into love. And you also step into self acceptance, self nourishment, and self appreciation is all connected. So get more creative. Find something that's interesting. Do something to light you up, even if it is just doodling on a piece of paper because that makes you happy. Do it. Do it. Do it. All right. What else can you do? These next two that I want to talk about are really pretty standard in all honesty, but they're super important. So we need to make sure to have some physical activity in your day. Physical activity is going to help to boost your mood and your energy. When we can release those feel good hormones, and when we can release those feel good hormones into our body and into our brain, those feel good hormones can help to bridge the gap for us to be able to step back, to take a breather, to move into less burnout, into less stress. Like we need to get that out. And remember, on the Energy Fix, we talk about this all the time. Energy is everything. So if you have all of this pent up energy that is being stuck within you, if you're having emotions getting trapped within your physical tissue, if you are having a stressful day and it is just getting trapped and held within your body, all of those emotions are going to stay stuck until you purposefully move them. And there's plenty of ways to move energy throughout the body: breathing and breath work and stretching and body movement, energy healing and balancing out your chakras, just to name a few. But physical exercise is such an important one. Not only are you moving the energy, but you're also detoxing your body and you are allowing those feel good hormones to just expand so that they can bring you frequency vibrationally up a notch so that you can move forward more powerfully. And then finally, the other one I want to highlight is just supporting your body with a healthy diet, healthy nutrition, getting quality sleep, and also managing those relationships that you allow yourself to be surrounded in. So important, these little lifestyle choices. When we can eat foods that nourish our body and support our brain and support our physical energy level, we're going to have more energy, physical energy, mental capacity, and mental clarity to be able to do the work to get out of the old cycles. This same concept goes for sleep, but it also goes for the way and the amount of time that we hang out with people and create relationships. especially if they're more toxic relationships, because more toxic relationships are just going to make you feel more shitty. That's just the way that it is. And you may not feel shitty at first, but what's going to happen is it's going to start to bring you down. And we don't want that, right? We don't want that. So, allowing yourself to open the curtain, to open your eyes and your viewpoint, your perception about who you're truly surrounding yourself with is going to help you to move out of some of that burnout. Remember, and I forget who actually says this, I can never remember, but they say, whoever they is, right? They say that you become the top 5 people that you spend the most amount of time with. So, who's that in your life? Who are you spending the most time with? And are those people supporting your shift and your change into the new way of being? Are those people supporting lower stress levels? Are those people supporting you and the changes that you're trying to make? Or are they just possibly contributing to the problem? Just something to think about. And as we do all of that, and as we do all of this that we just talked about, you're going to be shifting your overall energy. All of the balancing of your chakras and the opening up of your overall energetic body to be more balanced, to clear off the energies that maybe aren't serving you, that you've picked up along the way from people, places, and things. You're clearing all of that away. And if you still feel like there's some residue there, definitely thinking about getting some energy healing work. It could be through some crystal Reiki, like the work that I do. It could be through acupuncture, maybe even some massage, sound healing. There's a ton of different energy healing modalities that can be really helpful in this kind of situation. What I want to drive home today is that taking a few moments each and every day is not selfish. It is truly critical for your mental and your emotional well-being. It's going to help you to be happier, to be more resilient, to help you step into a place of more self-love and self-understanding. All of this, all of this is going to expand you and bring you more abundance and possibility in your life. But it starts with you. And allowing yourself to take some of the time and to take some of the small little steps to move forward so that you can step into that healthier place because you deserve it. You deserve to be the best possible you. Thank you so much for being here today. And like I said earlier, if you like this video and you found it to be valuable, please hit subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you can continue to follow me and get updates on all of the video and the content that I put out. And share this out to friends because I know there's somebody in your life that might be hitting burnout right now and needs to hear this, even if it's just a little whisper of motivation. So share it out to your friends. I would greatly appreciate it.